Princess Anne has essentially just been granted one of the most powerful positions in the British royal family. To be honest, nobody is talking about what this actually means for the monarchy right now. Although it seems like a ceremonial issue at first glance, there are significant consequences. Because it has come at Camilla's expense, the entire situation is significantly more fascinating than anyone could have predicted. This is the situation. You know the red box, the legendary receptacle that holds all of the state records and exclusive intelligence briefings that are solely available to the king. Yes, it ended up in Anne's hands instead of Camilla's. And before you think that's merely a symbolic gesture, understand that whoever possesses the keys to that red box effectively holds actual power within the British monarchy. We are not talking about ceremonial concerns here. We're talking about who actually takes charge when things become tough, who has the last say on legislation, and who has access to confidential intelligence. It is the true source of constitutional authority, and now has it, but Camilla just doesn't. King Charles made this decision, which says a lot about how he sees his own rule and who he truly trusts in severe circumstances. This is the issue with having a queen consort. Camilla is indeed the king's spouse. Sometimes she's by his side all the time. She is, in a way, one of his closest regular pals. She was completely shut out of the actual system of national governance, nevertheless. And that's intentional. It's not an accident or an odd omission. This was a deliberate choice. As a result, you need to understand the context first. King Charles is currently dealing with personal health problems, which is obviously putting a burden on the entire system. A king who has to deal with medical treatments all the time cannot try to manage every aspect of daily governance. A compromise is required. So the question is, who fills that void? Prince William seems like the clear choice on paper, but this is where things become really interesting. He is the heir. In the future, he will be king. While Charles is recovering, he should be in charge of administrative tasks, right? But William can't pull it off. In all honesty, that makes perfect sense when you take into account his current actual circumstances. Catherine is recuperating from a serious medical condition of her own. William's 3 young children require his involvement and presence as a father. He is being pulled in every direction, both practically and emotionally. In addition to all of that, he already has to deal with the psychological weight of knowing that he will be king someday. If he had to learn how to run the monarchy on a daily basis, he wouldn't be able to handle it all. It's too much for one person, especially if that person also has little children and a wife recovering from a serious illness. Instead of looking at the heir apparent, Charles turned to face his sister. Because Anne is so perfect for the role in ways that William could never be, this is where the genius maneuver takes place. But not right now. First of all, as she is only 2 years younger than Charles, she has lived through the same historical periods, knows all of the same political figures, and is aware of the precedents because she was there when they were established. She doesn't require an explanation because she experienced several historical events firsthand. That kind of knowledge is very important when working with a government in crisis and cannot be quickly imparted or falsified. But the biggest problem is something that most people wouldn't even think about, to be honest. Anne is not interested in becoming a dynastic. In the world of royal politics, praising someone for anything may seem odd, but it's essential. You see, there was a male preference primogeniture system in place when Anne and Charles were younger, which basically meant that even though she was born second and Charles was born later, he eventually moved ahead of her in the line of succession just because he is a man. Anne was consequently pushed further and further down the line with each new sibling. That is obviously unfair and out of date, but this is what's fascinating. She is actually the best person to be in charge right now because she has neither the means nor the desire to aspire to the throne. Think about the political ramifications of that. When Anne walks into a room, opens that red box, or delivers a message from the monarch to the Prime Minister, no one suspects her of attempting to boost her own power. She is not being utilized by a rival organization to hurt Charles, nor is she endorsed by any faction. She is just the messenger, as everyone knows. She is completely trustworthy because she literally has nothing to gain herself by abusing the system. She couldn't become queen, no matter how hard she tried. She is therefore not motivated to take advantage of anything. The government has faith in her, the public has faith in her, Above all, Charles is completely confident in her. To tell the truth, that trust didn't just happen. Charles did not choose his sister to fulfill this responsibility at random. For decades, Queen Elizabeth practically prepared Anne for this role, even though no one called it that at the time. In times of real crisis or political turmoil in the later half of the 20th century, Elizabeth would dispatch Anne to speak on behalf of the British Commonwealth, not for other royals' delightful ceremonial outings. Anne was sent to places where difficult situations and delicate discussion were actually necessary. Elizabeth trusted her daughter with real authority and the ability to make decisions on behalf of the crown when the Queen was unable to attend in person. Essentially, the skill of high-level statecraft was taught for decades. Anne wasn't just showing up and waving at them. She was doing the actual work of representation and diplomacy under the most difficult circumstances. Therefore, by the time Elizabeth was dying, she had already laid the groundwork for Charles's rule. She had already made Anne the perfect stand-in for the monarchy whenever it needed a good administrator. The issue is that Elizabeth made a very smart constitutional decision just before she died, which effectively sealed the deal. As she approached the end of her life and contemplated what Charles's rule would actually entail, the Queen arranged this amendment to the Regency Acts through Parliament in late 2022. She added Edward and Anne to the roster of active councillors of state for the remainder of their lives. This may sound like a technical legal matter, but since it settled a big problem that nobody was really talking about in public, it was actually excellent palace diplomacy. The issue was that the monarch's authority was effectively diminished by the prior list of those who may assume power. Harry had isolated himself from the outside world by moving to California and following his dreams. Furthermore, Andrew was no longer useful in politics due to his personal scandals. To put it another way, if something happened to Charles and he was unable to rule, practically none of the individuals he truly wanted in power would be able to take over. Elizabeth fixed that by adding Anne and Edward permanently. It was politically and legally impenetrable, and it effectively marginalized Harry and Andrew in a respectable and unchallengeable manner. Thus, Elizabeth basically stated, "Okay, when my son becomes king and he goes through what kings go through, health problems, pressure, exhaustion, Anne is going to be the person he can turn to. She's going to be the safety net. Furthermore, no one will be able to contest or try to undermine it in the future because I'm doing this through Parliament and making it official." But before all of that, Anne had already begun to accrue these titles and honors, which effectively indicated to those observing that she was rising in the family hierarchy. In 1987, Elizabeth gave her the title of Princess Royal. This title can only be held by one person at a time and is customarily awarded to the oldest daughter of the current monarch. It goes beyond simple kindness to give it to a family member. Regardless of the political situation in the country, it is implicitly expected that you will serve the crown for the remainder of your life. It is essentially an official statement that this person is essential to the functioning of our dynasty. Then, in 1996, Anne received the Knight of the Thistle, Scotland's highest order of chivalry, and this is notable because it wasn't arbitrary ceremonial crap. Anne had spent years managing complex connections and charitable projects around the Commonwealth and doing real work in Scotland, rather than just going to picture shoots. In essence, the country stated to a knight, "Okay, we see you. We recognize that you understand this country on a deeper level than just ceremonial appearances." Then, during his coronation in 2023, Charles accomplished something genuinely amazing. He chose Anne to be his gold stick in waiting, a distinguished role that has existed for many generations and is typically given to someone the king trusts for their own security and safety. During Charles's coronation, Anne is seen riding horseback through the streets of London directly behind his gold state coach while wearing full military attire. That is more than just an artifact from the past. Charles is publicly demonstrating his trust in front of the entire nation. In essence, he is showing everyone that Anne is the one who backs him and the dynasty. It was a clear signal with great significance. Seeing how Anne's marriage to Timothy Lawrence has developed alongside her has been fascinating. Timothy joined the royal family in the mid-1980s when he was a young naval officer chosen to be Queen Elizabeth's equerry. He wasn't known or attempting to attract attention. He was only operating the machinery that supported the family, witnessing personally how challenging it was to manage all of Anne's stress. Elizabeth also saw how Timothy assisted Anne without ever requesting praise or attention, how he just pledged to support her during a very difficult schedule. In 2011, Elizabeth bestowed upon him the title of Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, which is essentially the Queen's way of saying thank you to a close and helpful servant. But Charles took it a step farther. He recently elevated Timothy to Knight Grand Cross, the highest rank in the Royal Victorian Order. This gift from Charles to Timothy is completely private and has nothing to do with any formal process. I'm adding you to this exclusive group of people who are closest to the throne because I know how much you mean to Anne, which is a clear statement from the monarch himself that I see what you've done. It is a striking public statement of Timothy's increasing importance to the actual function of the monarchy. The tension with Camilla is heightened by the historical context of all of this, which is where things become interesting. Long before Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles and became Queen Consort, they had a close friendship when he was with Anne in the early 1970s. Additionally, Anne and Andrew developed a genuine bond due to their shared interests. They loved horses. They are both very interested in horse-related subjects. They had a close bond, to be honest, but it didn't work out because of religious differences. The Constitution at the time forbade this kind of marriage as Andrew was Catholic. Thus, they ended it. Nevertheless, Andrew and Anne continued to be close friends even after he married Camilla. Anne married Mark Phillips after that, but their marriage didn't work out. She eventually located Timothy, who had been quietly supporting her all along. And that collaboration developed into the strong, stable one that enabled Anne to work hard and complete the incredible amount of work she does. With more than 450 engagements a year, she performs more than any other working royal. Additionally, Timothy only supports it. He doesn't need anything from it. Because Camilla is completely shut out of the red box and all the real power while Anne is rising, there is a complicated backstory to what is happening at the moment. The king's wife is Camilla. She is not included in the actual operations of government, even if she is the queen consort. While this is going on, Anne is being positioned as the true core of institutional authority despite having a crown, decades of actual work, and a husband who has quietly stood by her side. The data backs up the views that the British public has essentially already developed over all of this. Recent polls consistently place Anne at the top of the royal popularity rankings, right next to recollections of Catherine and Elizabeth. She is seen as the most hard-working member of the family, the one who actually shows up and finishes duties without needing constant approbation or media attention. Moreover, they do not consider her elevation to this post next to the Regent to be a political maneuver or a power grab. They think it's just. It definitely should have happened already because she earned it via hard work and genuine service. This public sentiment was best expressed in this moment from the BBC show about Charles's coronation year. During what was basically the monarchy's most vulnerable period, the program gave viewers an intimate look into its inner workings. In that film, Anne also achieved something that royals rarely do. She was just telling the truth about something real. When talking about her mother's final days at Balmoral, she revealed that Elizabeth had been worried about passing away there because of the difficulties the family and the government would face. And because her mother deserved to be at peace, Anne, being Anne, simply urged her to get past that and spend her final days wherever she chose. However, this is the part that really attracted people's interest. Anne recounted seeing the imperial state crown taken from Elizabeth's coffin during the funeral. She also expressed her profound relief. It wasn't because she didn't love her or wasn't sad that she recognized her mother's burden had finally been relieved. Elizabeth had finally been freed from the weight of obligation she had carried for decades. Anne was able to acknowledge that her mother had practically sacrificed her entire life for the group, and there was something almost calming about knowing that the pressure had finally eased. Anne's unabashed candor about duty, mortality, and the true cost of service changed the nation's opinion of her. It grounded everything in real human emotion rather than pomp and circumstance. And that moment in the documentary was important because it showed that Anne was qualified for this role. She won't pretend that everything is fine when it isn't. She won't hide behind ceremony or formality. She understands that in order for the organization to exist, it must be honest about its actual expenses and the people who actually work there. The younger generation of royals, particularly William and Catherine, have also exhibited this. Both of them have voiced their admiration for Anne and their sincere desire for her to take on this significant role. In particular, William has expressed that he views Anne as the family's essential defender, someone who protects everyone around them from constant media attention because of their indisputable work ethic and ethics. He and Catherine have both deliberately placed her in the spotlight during important occasions to show the audience that they do not see her as a threat or a rival. They think she deserves recognition because she is the one doing the actual work. William may also see that he currently benefits from Anne's elevated standing. It eases some of the stress when he's trying to be there for his kids and overseeing Catherine's recovery. He doesn't have to try to be everywhere and do everything. Because Anne is handling the difficult administrative tasks, he can be a spouse, a parent, and eventually a future king, just not all three at once just yet. William is aware of how cleverly power is distributed, but it's now almost impossible to ignore how Anne's rise will affect Camilla's standing. Because, although having the title of Queen Consort and being able to sit next to Charles at formal gatherings, Camilla is effectively excluded from actual authority. She does not receive the red box. She does not receive classified briefings. She is not permitted to examine state records or sign legislation. With Anne managing the actual governing mechanism, she simply acts as a ceremonial presence, and that wasn't an error or a failure. That is a deliberate statement about Charles's values and the individuals he considers to be genuinely reliable. Camilla has also spent her entire stay in the royal family trying to cope with Diana's lingering shadow. The British public never really forgave her because of her apparent role in Charles and Diana's marriage, and this load persists despite the fact that Diana has been gone for years and decades. It must be a painful revelation of Camilla's actual position within the company to see Anne's public joy and Charles' promotion while she is denied actual authority. She is not trusted with crucial topics even if she is married to the king. The monarchy's current situation is remarkable because it has fundamentally changed how it operates, maintaining the illusion that everything was perfect and that the royals were somehow above the problems the populace experienced was the ancient palace strategy. But Charles and Catherine have essentially given up on that strategy. Charles has been open about his health and treatment, in contrast to earlier monarchs. The institution is effectively saying, okay, this is real life. These are real challenges and here's how we're handling them, rather than trying to hide or minimize what's going on. Catherine has been transparent about her own recovery journey, and in that sense, by designating Anne as this crucial administrative position, the monarchy is actually being wise about its own existence. When Charles states, "I need to share this burden with someone I completely trust, and that person is my sister," he is not implying that the organization can function without someone taking over. He is being honest and genuine about what the situation actually demands. No matter what else is changing or unclear about the monarchy at the moment, people are genuinely comforted by the idea of Anne standing in the middle of all of this, ready to open the red box, sign laws, and guide the state through whatever comes next, because Anne is a known quantity. She'll show up. She will complete the task. It won't be a source of self-glorification for her. Furthermore, she will make decisions based on what is actually best for the organization and the country rather than her own interests. People know how rare that is. As a result, the public's response has been mostly favorable. Because of this, even if her job change might not seem like much on the surface, it actually represents a crucial part of the monarchy's efforts to adapt, stay relevant, and continue to function in an era where the outdated formulas just don't work.